night settled over the royal gardens slowly, like a sheet of deep blue silk being lowered from the sky. The stars pierced through it in tiny, delicate points, as if the fabric itself had been sewn with silver needles. Their glow touched the ground in thin, trembling strands, light so soft it felt like footsteps trying not to wake anyone. At the center of the garden stood an ancient oak tree. Its bark carried the rough texture of countless seasons, and its branches layered outward like a quiet shelter. Whenever the wind drifted through its leaves, it brought with it a hint of resin and wild earth, an old, comforting scent that belonged to things that had outlived stories. Aurora sat curled at the base of the tree, her dress spilling gently around her like pale water. She rested her chin on her knees, listening to the night breathe. She loved coming here before bed. Somehow, the moment she touched the roots of this tree, her thoughts softened, her heartbeat slowed, and the world seemed just close enough to understand. Tonight it worked again, just not entirely. Something inside her felt unsettled, a quiet flutter like a bird trapped behind her ribs. She closed her eyes and drew a long breath. The night wind brushed her cheek with its cool fingertips, carrying the scent of grass and the faint sweetness of closing blossoms. She exhaled slowly, but her mind refused to settle. The dream returned the moment her breath left her body. That door, the one wrapped in wild, thorny roses. The more she tried to forget it, the clearer it became. For several nights now, Aurora had been falling asleep only to walk barefoot and weightless through a vast, pale hallway made of moonlit stone. Her footsteps never echoed. Her reflection never appeared in the tall windows lining both sides. The hallway had no end, no turns, only a slow pull that guided her forward. And always, at the very end of it, there was the door. Old wood, iron hinges, red roses growing out of the seams like veins from a sleeping heart. And behind that door a glow, warm, soft, calling. Every time she reached out, she woke up, heart racing, hands trembling. No reason she could explain. Tonight, sitting beneath the oak tree, she could almost feel the cold metal of the doorknob against her palm. Aurora opened her eyes and looked up through the branches. The sky beyond them shimmered with stars. For a moment they looked like tiny fires floating above her, and she wondered, quietly, foolishly, if dreams could spill into the waking world the way stars spilled into the night. Aurora. Her name drifted across the garden, wrapped in the gentle voice she knew too well. She turned. "Good evening, Flora." The fairy floated just above the stone path, her green gown softly glowing, wings fluttering with the sound of silk brushing against silk. She didn't always fly this late, which meant she was concerned. Fairies didn't worry loudly, but they worried entirely. "You're out later than usual," Flora said, landing lightly on the grass. "The night grows cooler. You'll catch a chill." "I'm fine," Aurora replied, pushing a small smile to her lips. "I just couldn't sleep." Flora narrowed her eyes in that way she did whenever Aurora tried to be braver than she felt. "The dreams again?" Aurora hesitated. "You knew?" "We always know," Flora said gently. "Dreams that repeat themselves are rarely just dreams." Aurora lowered her gaze. "It feels like something is waiting for me behind that door." Flora didn't answer. Not immediately. She looked toward the oak tree instead, as if listening for something only fairies could hear. "It's only a dream," Aurora added quickly, though her voice betrayed the uncertainty she carried. "Perhaps." Flora walked closer and touched Aurora's shoulder with a warm, glowing hand. "Or perhaps something is trying to find you." Aurora's breath caught. "Find me? Why?" Flora forced a smile. "You think too much for a girl your age. Let's save the questions for morning. Tonight, the only thing you need to do is rest." Aurora stood, brushing leaves from her dress. "I'll try." "You always try," Flora said. "But I need you to sleep." Her tone was soft, but something inside, something faint, trembling, made Aurora pause. Was Flora afraid? Before she could ask, Flora lifted her hand, and the air shimmered. A pathway of tiny floating lights appeared, leading back toward the castle. Aurora stepped onto the path, the lights shifting like warm fireflies beneath her feet. They walked side by side without speaking. The castle stood tall at the edge of the garden, its stone walls soaking up the moonlight like a great, quiet sentinel. Windows glowed softly from within. Curtains swayed in the breeze. A faint scent of lavender drifted from the open balcony above her room. Aurora stopped at the garden gate. "Flora," she said quietly, "do you think dreams can hurt someone?" Flora shook her head. "Dreams don't hurt, dear, but what hides inside them can." Aurora's heart tightened. "You're not telling me something?" Flora pressed her lips together. "Not in secrecy, in grief. There will come a day," she whispered, "when the door in your dream will open. And when that day comes, you must not walk through it alone." Aurora swallowed. "How do you know that?" "Because fate," Flora said, "always knocks on a door before it enters." The words lingered in the night like a small, trembling truth. Aurora didn't understand, but she felt the weight of them. She climbed the staircase to her room slowly. Inside, the candles were already lit, casting warm circles of light on the carpet. Her bed, draped in white canopy curtains, looked softer than it had in days. She slipped beneath the blankets and closed her eyes. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the moonlight on her eyelids shifted. The air thickened. Her heartbeat steadied into a slow, deep rhythm. And the hallway appeared again. Quiet, endless, waiting. Aurora took one step forward, then another. The roses on the door pulsed faintly, as if sensing her arrival. She reached out. Her fingertips touched the cool, ancient wood, and a whisper shivered through the darkness. "Not yet." A voice she didn't know, a voice that knew her. Aurora gasped and woke. Her room was silent, her window open, the curtains swaying like breath. She pressed a hand to her chest. The dream wasn't just a dream anymore. It was a place that knew her name. And somewhere, far beyond the castle walls, something stirred. Something that had waited a long, long time. Morning sunlight crept into Aurora's room with an almost shy touch, slipping between the curtains in soft golden lines. The warmth rested on her blankets, climbed slowly to her cheeks, and finally coaxed her eyes open. She woke not with a start, but with that strange heaviness that comes after a dream that was too vivid, too real, too close. For a moment she didn't move. Her body felt still, almost weightless, as if her mind was still standing in that moonlit hallway. Not yet. The voice replayed itself in her thoughts, the syllables soft but unmistakably real. She had never heard it before, yet something in it felt ancient, older than the castle, older than the kingdom, older than the stories whispered to her as a child. She rubbed her eyes and sat up. The room was warm and ordinary, which somehow made her more uneasy. She dressed slowly, the familiar rhythm grounding her, brushing her hair, fastening the soft blue ribbon behind her head, slipping into her shoes, opening the balcony window to let the morning breeze in. But even as she held on to these small routines, the dream lingered like dust on her skin. Not yet. Aurora stepped out onto the balcony and let the sunlight wash over her. The gardens below glowed with dew, and the breeze carried the scent of mint and roses. It should have been calming. Should have, but something inside her hummed with quiet tension. A flutter of wings drew her attention. A small brown bird landed on the railing beside her, head tilting, eyes bright. "Good morning," Aurora greeted softly. The bird chirped once, hopped closer, and then launched itself back into the air. It circled once over her head before flying toward the forest beyond the castle grounds. Aurora watched it disappear among the treetops. The forest. She had always felt drawn to its deep, quiet shade. The fairies insisted the woods were harmless, but they also insisted she should not wander too far alone, which of course only made the woods more intriguing. Today, the tug toward the forest felt stronger. Not dangerous, just insistent, like a question waiting for an answer. Aurora placed her hands on the balcony rail. Maybe fresh air would clear her mind. Maybe sunlight could dissolve the dream. Or maybe she simply needed to stop pretending she wasn't worried. She made up her mind. By the time she stepped into the garden path, the castle was already alive with morning chattermaids carrying fresh linens, gardeners trimming hedges, knights discussing patrol routes. Everyone seemed busy, comfortable, unaware that anything strange lingered in the air. Aurora slipped quietly through the arches of the garden gate and onto the narrow path leading into the woods. Sunlight filtered through the leaves in shifting patterns, painting her arms with warm gold one moment and cool shade the next. As she walked, the forest welcomed her with gentle sounds, rustling branches, the distant trickle of water, the hum of insects beginning their day. The air grew cooler, heavier with the scent of moss and damp earth. Aurora breathed it in, letting it settle somewhere deep inside her. For the first time since waking, her shoulders relaxed. Here, the world felt slower, kinder, truer. She followed the bird's path until she reached a clearing she often visited. The ground here was soft with fallen leaves, and a narrow stream wound silently through tall grass. A single fallen log served as her usual seat. But today, something was different. The forest seemed alert, as though listening. Aurora moved toward the log, but stopped when a faint shimmer flickered at the corner of her vision. She turned, expecting sunlight filtering through leaves. Instead, she saw floating dust. No, not dust. Light. Tiny particles of pale gold drifting lazily in the air. Fairy magic. Aurora exhaled slowly. "Fauna?" she called softly. "Merryweather?" No answer. The golden motes drifted in a thin trail, moving deeper into the forest, pulsing faintly like distant fireflies. Aurora hesitated. Fairies normally avoided using magic where humans could see, unless they wanted to be seen, or unless something else wanted her attention. The trail of light drifted forward, patient, almost polite. Aurora followed. The deeper she went, the stranger the air felt, not threatening, but familiar in a way she couldn't place, as if she had been here before in another life or in a dream she had already forgotten. After several minutes, the light trail ended abruptly at the base of a twisted yew tree. The bark was dark, the branches tangled so tightly they formed a canopy dense enough to cast a shadow even in daylight. Aurora stepped closer. The yew tree gave off a faint hum, so faint she thought she imagined it. She lifted her hand and placed it gently on the bark. It pulsed, not physically, but with a quiet warmth that traveled up her fingertips and into her palm. Aurora gasped softly. Suddenly, a vision flickered through her mind. Not an image, not a word, just a feeling. Loneliness. Old, cold, endless loneliness. Aurora pulled her hand back, heart beating fast. The forest fell silent, as though holding its breath. Then something shifted behind her. She turned sharply. A figure stood between the trees, tall, wrapped in shadows that clung to them like mist. Not approaching, not fleeing, simply watching. Aurora froze. The air seemed to tighten around her. The figure tilted its head, and for the briefest moment, she caught a glimpse of eyes bright, unnatural, like fractured moonlight. Then the shadows folded inward, and the figure dissolved into the forest, leaving not even a footprint behind. Aurora stood still long after the figure disappeared. Her chest rose and fell slowly, too slowly. Someone had been there, and whoever they were, they didn't feel like danger. They felt like the dream. Aurora pressed a hand to her chest again. The door, the roses, the whisper. Not yet. Suddenly the forest felt smaller, too quiet, too expectant. Aurora stepped backward. Her heel caught on a root and she stumbled, grabbing onto the yew tree to steady herself. The tree pulsed again, warmer this time, almost protective. Aurora. A voice cut through the silence. She turned. Flora rushed toward her, wings fluttering sharply. Her usually calm expression hardened with alarm. "What are you doing here?" Flora demanded, grabbing Aurora's arm. "You cannot wander this deep alone." Aurora tried to speak. I saw something, or someone, a figure, in the shadows." Flora's face drained of color. "Did it touch you?" "No." "Did it speak?" Aurora shook her head. Flora exhaled shakily and pulled her closer. "We need to get you back to the castle." "What?" "No." Flora's voice cracked. "No arguments. Not today." Aurora had never heard Flora sound like this. It wasn't scolding. It wasn't worry. It was fear. Real, trembling fear. As Flora guided her away, Aurora glanced back toward the yew tree one last time. The golden motes of light were gone. The air no longer hummed. The forest stood perfectly still. But Aurora knew, without any doubt at all, that the dream had followed her into the waking world. And whatever waited behind that door was no longer waiting quietly. The castle felt different when Aurora returned, brighter on the outside, quieter on the inside, almost as if the walls themselves were listening. Flora kept a firm hold on her wrist all the way down the garden path, her wings beating unevenly, betraying more panic than she meant to show. Aurora didn't speak. She sensed that any question she asked now would either be ignored or answered with another gentle lie. Fairies often softened truths for her sake, Flora especially. But today, something in the air made softness feel pointless. When they reached Aurora's room, Flora finally released her hand. She flew once around the room, checking corners, windows, curtains, even the shadow under the bed, as though expecting danger to be hiding in a fold of fabric. Only after satisfying herself that the room was safe did she turn back to Aurora. "You must stay inside the castle tonight," Flora said. "No gardens, no forest, no wandering." Aurora swallowed. "Because of what I saw?" Flora hesitated. "Because something saw you." Aurora's breath hitched. "What was it?" Flora shook her head. "Not yet." A chill crawled slowly down Aurora's spine. That phrase again. Flora softened her tone. "I'll be nearby. Call me if anything feels strange." As if everything didn't already feel strange. With a small wave of her hand, Flora dimmed the lights, leaving only the soft glow of the bedside lantern. Then she slipped through the door, closing it gently behind her. Aurora stood still. "Not yet." The words echoed in her mind with a rhythm too steady, too clear to dismiss as imagination. She changed into a sleeping gown and sat on the edge of her bed. Outside her window, the sky shifted toward late afternoon, clouds slow and heavy with the promise of evening. She didn't want to sleep, but she knew she would. Sleep always found her, especially when she resisted. Aurora crawled beneath the blankets and lay on her back, staring at the faint patterns the lantern light cast on the canopy above. She tried to breathe deeply, steadily. She tried to think of nothing. But the moment her eyes closed, she fell. Not a gentle drift into dreams, but a drop. Cold air swept past her. Darkness thickened around her. Her feet hit solid ground, though she hadn't felt herself move. And when she lifted her head, the hallway was already waiting. Long, silent, silver lit. Aurora's pulse fluttered. She knew this place too well now. Every stone, every shadow, every echo that didn't quite echo. She wrapped her arms around herself and took a cautious step forward. As she walked, the air hummed faintly, not with danger, but with familiarity, as though someone had breathed life into every inch of the corridor long before she existed. Halfway down the hall, she felt it again. The presence. Not the door, not the roses. Something watching her. "Who's there?" Aurora asked softly. Her voice didn't echo. It never echoed here. A whisper drifted through the corridor, thin as silk. Closer. Aurora froze. The shadow at the far end of the hall stretched upward, shaping itself into the outline of a figure tall, blurred at the edges, as if carved from moonlight but held together by something darker. It didn't move toward her. It didn't have to. It waited. Aurora swallowed hard. Are you the one who said, not yet? The figure tilted its head slightly. A low hum filled the air, vibrating the stone under her feet. Not threatening, not comforting. Something between the two. A sound of recognition or longing. Aurora took a step forward despite herself. The figure's edges sharpened, revealing more shape, a faint outline of hands, a suggestion of a face obscured in shadow. Its eyes were the only part that gleamed clearly. Bright, reflective, like fractured moonlight. Who are you? She whispered. The whisper came again, closer this time. Almost. Aurora's heart pounded. Almost what? The shadow shifted. The entire corridor dimmed, not in darkness, but in clarity, as if she were standing inside the memory of a dream, not the dream itself. Her feet grew heavy. Her breath shortened. Something, an invisible tether, pulled her toward the door behind the figure. The roses around it pulsed faintly, petals darkening like drops of ink spreading in water. Aurora pressed a hand to her chest. I don't understand. The figure lifted one hand, slow, deliberate. Though it didn't touch her, Aurora felt warmth spread across her cheek, like a thumb brushing it gently. I'm not afraid, she said aloud, though that wasn't entirely true. The shadow leaned closer. You will be. A cold rush swept up her spine. The corridor cracked. The roses writhed. The door rattled violently, as if something behind it clawed at the wood, desperate to escape. Aurora stumbled backward. Stop? The shadow straightened suddenly. Its head turned sharply toward the door, as if hearing a sound she couldn't. The roses thrashed. The hinges strained. The entire hall quivered. And then the shadow stepped between Aurora and the door, protecting her. Light bright, blinding, white gold burst from behind the door, swallowing the roses, shredding the shadows, ripping the dream apart. Aurora threw her hands over her eyes as the world collapsed. When she opened them again, she was gasping in her bed. The lantern on the bedside table flickered wildly. Wind roared through the open window, scattering papers across the floor. Her curtains whipped like terrified ghosts. Flora burst through the door, wings blazing with blue light. Aurora, what happened? Aurora couldn't speak at first. She pressed a trembling hand over her heart, tears stinging unexpectedly at the corners of her eyes. The dream, she whispered. It wasn't a dream. There was someone there, and the door, Flora, something was trying to break through. Flora's face went pale. Aurora, she said quietly, listen to me very carefully. Aurora met her eyes. Flora's wings dimmed. Her voice soft. And for the first time since Aurora was a child, Flora looked truly afraid to say what she was about to say. The dreams are no longer visions of the future. Aurora's breath hitched. Then what are they? Flora held her gaze. They are warnings. Aurora stared at her, chest rising and falling too fast. Warnings of what? But Flora didn't say the word, because she didn't have to. Aurora felt it. That door, when it finally opened, her life would never be the same. Even after Flora soothed the wind with a single wave of her hand and secured the window shut, the room did not fully settle. The walls still seemed to hum with the echo of the dream of the door shaking, of the shadow standing between her and whatever clawed from the other side. Flora remained by the bed for a long moment, wings unfurled, her silhouette outlined by the lantern's trembling glow. She wasn't just guarding, she was listening, waiting for some invisible shift only she could sense. Aurora finally managed a steady inhale. "Flora, what is it that you're not telling me?" Flora's eyes softened, and that softness alone was frightening. Flora was rarely gentle when things were truly serious. She usually used scolding as a shield, but tonight the shield was gone. "There are things," Flora began carefully, "that were decided long before you were born, long before your mother, long before the kingdom itself." Aurora pushed herself up against the pillows. "Things like the curse?" Flora hesitated. That was answer enough. Aurora exhaled. "I thought the curse was broken." "It was," Flora insisted quickly. Mostly?" Flora pursed her lips. It was clear she wanted to change the subject, to stall, to protect her, but the truth had already slipped through the cracks. Aurora swung her legs over the side of the bed. "Flora, I need you to tell me." The fairy fluttered toward her, landing lightly on the wooden footboard. The curse was undone, yes, but magic, especially old magic, never really disappears. It changes shape. It hides. It sleeps. Aurora swallowed. "Like me," Flora flinched. Aurora wished she hadn't said it, but the thought had been lurking inside her since childhood, the strange pull toward dreams, the unexplainable stillness inside her whenever she touched old magic, the way shadows sometimes seemed to recognize her. "Flora," Aurora whispered, "I saw a figure in my dream. I saw the door. I felt something. It wasn't just a nightmare. It felt like part of the curse." Flora shook her head. "No, not part of it. A shadow left behind by it." "A shadow," Aurora repeated. "Then what was the figure?" Flora's wings flickered. "Something that should not have found you yet." Aurora's heart gave a painful thump. "But it did." "Yes," Flora admitted quietly, "and that is the thorn." Aurora frowned. "What do you mean?" Flora took a breath. "Every curse leaves a scar, a single thorn of fate. Some scars remain dormant forever. Others eventually wake." Aurora's fingertips tingled. She rubbed her palms together slowly. "So the dream is the thorn waking up?" Flora didn't answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "The dream is the thorn calling your name." A soft, sickening shiver went down Aurora's spine. The memory of the whisper closer came back, sharp as cold metal sliding along skin. Aurora's throat tightened. "What does it want from me?" Flora stepped forward and placed a tiny glowing hand on Aurora's knee. "Not harm. That much I know. But magic does not call without purpose, and fate does not stir without cost." Aurora breathed shakily. "I saw the roses choke the door. I saw the door shake. Something was behind it, something trying to break out." Flora closed her eyes. "You must not open that door. Not in dreams and not in waking." Aurora blinked. "It can open in waking?" "It shouldn't," Flora snapped, then softened. "But if the shadow reached you, if it touched your dream, then the door may begin to reflect itself in the real world." "Reflect itself?" Aurora murmured. Like a mirror, like a warning, Flora corrected. Aurora's pulse quickened. Flora, who was the shadow? This time Flora looked away. She stared at the lantern flame, wings drooping, shoulders sinking in a way Aurora had never seen. We don't know, Flora whispered. Not entirely, but we know it's older than Maleficent, older than her magic, older than curses themselves. Aurora's breath hitched. Older than fate? Flora's eyes flashed. Exactly. Aurora wrapped her arms around herself. Suddenly the room felt too small, too tight, too full of shadows where answers should have been. Flora reached for her hand. Rest now. We'll stand guard all night. Aurora nodded, though she knew sleep would be impossible. Her body was trembling lightly, as though her bones remembered something her mind didn't. Flora flew to the door. Sleep if you can, but don't try to go back into the dream. Aurora nodded again. Flora hovered for a moment longer, then stepped out into the hallway. The door clicked shut. Aurora sat alone in the dim chamber, the lantern flickering weakly, as though trying to reassure her. But reassurance didn't come. She lay down slowly, pulling the blanket to her chin. The bed was warm, the pillows soft, the night quiet. Yet none of it settled her. Every shadow in the room seemed to lean toward her. Every breath of air seemed to whisper, "Not yet." Aurora closed her eyes. She did not sleep at first, but eventually exhaustion pulled her toward a light, fragile slumber. And as she drifted, she sensed it. A faint hum beneath the castle floor, a pulse behind the walls, a tremor deep below her bed. The thorn waking. In the darkness, she turned onto her side, unaware of the faint glow pulsing beneath her skin, tender, soft, and unmistakably magic. Far beyond the castle, deep in the forest, the old yew tree shuddered once, shedding a thin flake of bark. And somewhere in the unseen spaces between dream and waking, a voice whispered gently. Soon, Aurora stepped into the next dream as though crossing a thin sheet of water. The light behind her faded, swallowed by the quiet of a place that wasn't a meadow, a corridor, or a field of sparks. This dream was different, denser, older, and tinged with a silence that felt lived in. She found herself standing in a small, round room. Stone walls curved gently inward, textured like they had been carved by hand long before she was born. A single window rested high above her, offering a slice of moonlight, pale and steady. Everything here smelled faintly of parchment and dust, like forgotten pages of a book that hadn't been opened in a century. Aurora turned slowly. In the center of the room stood a wooden table, and on that table lay a music box, delicate, golden, and etched with a familiar pattern of roses and stars. Her breath caught. She knew this box. She couldn't explain how, but her chest tightened the moment she saw it. A whisper of memory brushed past her ear, too soft to understand. She stepped closer. The music box was warm, not with heat, but with presence. She touched the lid. A click. The box opened on its own. A shimmering melody spilled out slow and circular, as if echoing through water. Notes drifted into the air, dissolving into tiny sparks that hovered around her fingertips. Each spark pulsed like a heartbeat. Aurora swallowed. Why does this feel like mine? A voice answered from somewhere behind her. Because it is. Aurora turned sharply. In the corner of the room stood a figure, an old man with a long white beard, a cloak wrinkled like soft blankets, and eyes so gentle they made the room feel instantly warmer. He wasn't threatening, just tired, and somehow familiar. "Who are you?" she asked. The man smiled. "I am Kostas, the keeper of this room, the guardian of what the dreamer forgets." Aurora frowned softly. "What do I forget?" The man's eyes flicked toward the music box. "More than you think, less than you fear." Cryptic, yet comforting. Kostas stepped closer, his footsteps soundless on the stone floor. "This room remembers what you cannot touch in your waking life. It keeps your earliest stories, your hidden fears, your childhood promises, and your lost truths." Aurora's fingers tightened on the music box. "Why show it to me now?" The old man looked at her with sadness. "Because the dream you are trapped in is unraveling. And if you don't recover what was taken from you, the rest of your story will slip through the seam." Aurora felt her throat tighten. "Taken? By who?" Kostas sighed, folding his hands into his sleeves. "The one who sealed your door. The one who wrapped your memory in roses and thorns." Aurora's heartbeat stumbled. "You mean the witch from the stories?" "No," Kostas said gently. "Stories borrowed her shape, but the truth is older and far more complicated." Aurora stepped closer to him. Her voice trembled in a way she didn't expect. "Then tell me." The old man studied her for a long moment. "You're not ready to hear the whole truth," he said softly, "but you are ready to take back what was locked away." He pointed to the music box. Aurora looked down. Inside the open lid, the golden gears turned slowly. But instead of a dancing figure or spinning jewel, something else lay at the bottom. A key, small, silver, engraved with a single rose petal. Aurora lifted it gently. It vibrated faintly in her hand like it recognized her. Kostas spoke quietly. "You must use that key where the dream is weakest, where it frays, where something once split apart." "And where is that?" she asked. "The place behind the falling stars." Aurora felt a chill slide down her spine. She had seen falling stars before in one of the earliest dreams, near the misty lake. She hadn't understood the significance then. Now she did. Kostas's voice softened even further. "When you reach that place, the roses will respond. They will move for you, and the door that has waited all these years will." He paused, his gaze turning cloudy, almost worried. "What?" Aurora whispered. "It will open," he said at last, "and whatever waits behind it will no longer be content to sleep." Aurora closed her fingers around the key. Fear, curiosity, a strange, aching hope. All of it swirled together. She lifted her head. "How do I leave this room?" Kostas smiled faintly and tapped his staff against the floor. The stone beneath them rippled like a pond touched by a pebble. The walls shimmered. The window brightened. Aurora felt the dream pulling at her again. But before she drifted away, Kostas spoke one last time. "Aurora," she turned. His expression was almost fatherly. "Whatever you remember, whatever you find, Do not forget that the truth is a healing thing, even when it feels like a wound. She swallowed. I'll try. The old man bowed, and the room dissolved into moonlit dust. Aurora felt herself falling gently, as though wrapped in feathers, drifting into the next layer of dream toward the falling stars, toward the roses, toward the long-locked door that waited for her. The silver key glowed warmly in her palm. The dream pulled her onward, and Chapter 6 began to form in the soft darkness ahead. Aurora drifted downward as if carried by invisible wings. The darkness around her wasn't frightening. It felt like velvet, soft and cool, brushing lightly across her arms and shoulders. And somewhere within that darkness, the silver key pulsed faintly against her palm, guiding her like a heartbeat she didn't yet understand. When her feet touched ground again, the darkness thinned into twilight. A faint glow appeared overhead. Then another, and another. Aurora lifted her gaze. Stars were falling. Dozens of them, gentle streaks of light sliding across the sky like glowing raindrops. They didn't burn or crash. They drifted, slow, peaceful, almost shy. They landed softly on the ground around her, settling like little lanterns, each giving off its own quiet warmth. Aurora exhaled in a whisper. "This place, it's beautiful." Her voice didn't echo. The air here was too still, too tender, as if it didn't want to disturb the stars. She took a step forward. The ground beneath her was not grass, but a blanket of starlight, soft, shimmering, yielding slightly under her feet. Her footsteps left faint trails, as though she were walking across fresh snow made of light. As she walked, the silver key warmed again. Not burning, just a gentle reminder. A quiet voice pressing against her palm. This way. Aurora followed. The falling stars thickened ahead, forming a curtain of drifting light. She brushed aside a star as it floated past her face. It felt cool, like touching the surface of a lake at night. Something moved behind the curtain. A soft hum vibrated through the air. Then, slowly, the curtain of falling stars parted. Beyond it lay a clearing, circular, silent, and filled with roses. Not red, not white, silver. Their petals shimmered faintly with each star that touched them, glowing like moonlit metal. And in the center of the clearing stood an archway woven entirely of thorned vines. Aurora's breath caught. The same archway she had seen in her earliest dreams. The one from childhood. The one in the meadow of Somnia. The one wrapped in roses and warnings. It was here. It was real. Or as real as anything in a dream could be. Aurora stepped forward carefully. Her heartbeat matched the key's pulse. One step, another. The roses around her tilted slightly, as though turning their faces toward her, welcoming her, or waiting. She reached the archway. The vines were twisted tightly, creating a barrier so dense that even the falling stars couldn't slip through. The thorns glistened, sharp but beautiful, like frozen lightning. Aurora lifted the key. The vines shivered. A low sound, almost a sigh, rippled through the clearing. It wasn't wind. It wasn't a creature. It was the archway itself. As if recognizing her, she whispered, barely breathing, "You know me, don't you?" The vines trembled again. The roses brightened. A faint silver mist curled around her hand. Aurora's chest tightened, not with fear, but with something old and fragile. A memory trying to reach her from the other side. She pressed the key toward the center of the thorned barrier. A thin, nearly invisible lock revealed itself formed of light, hidden until this moment. The key slid in without resistance. The moment it touched the lock, every rose in the clearing opened at once. A soft chime echoed across the field. The vines unraveled slowly, like fingers releasing a long-held breath. Thorns melted into silver dust, drifting upward into the falling stars. The archway cleared, and behind it, darkness. Not empty, not cold. A living darkness, like the inside of a deep forest at night quiet, waiting, holding its secrets carefully. Aurora hesitated. Her hand shook slightly. Custa's voice echoed faintly in her memory. Whatever you remember, whatever you find, the truth is a healing thing. Aurora swallowed, her voice barely a breath. I'm ready. She stepped through the archway. The world shifted instantly. The falling stars vanished. The roses vanished. Silence swallowed everything. Aurora blinked. Her vision adjusted. She was standing in a long, dim hallway, narrow, lined with doors made of dark wood. Each door had a small window of frosted glass, glowing faintly from within. It felt like a place designed to hold stories, or people, or memories too fragile to be left in the open. Aurora's pulse quickened. She wasn't afraid, but she wasn't calm either. The key in her hand dimmed, no longer guiding. It had done its part. Aurora took a slow step forward. One of the doors ahead rattled lightly, as if something inside had shifted. Another door creaked softly, like it had been waiting for her to arrive. The entire hallway felt aware. Awake. She whispered into the quiet, "Who's here?" A voice answered. Not booming, not ghostly. Soft, human, heartbroken. Aurora, her breath stopped. The voice came from the third door on the right. A voice she somehow recognized. A voice that made her chest ache, though she didn't understand why. She stepped closer, trembling slightly. "Aurora," the voice whispered again, breaking on her name. "I've been waiting for you." Aurora touched the door. Warm. Alive. Her pulse raced. "Who are you?" she whispered. A pause. Then, softly, "Someone who should never have let you fall asleep." Aurora froze. A single tear she didn't understand why slipped quietly down her cheek. And the chapter ends there. Aurora pressed her palm against the wooden door. It was warm, as if someone stood on the other side with their hand placed exactly where hers rested now. The warmth pulsed once soft, hesitant like a heartbeat that wasn't sure if it should hope. The voice came again, quieter than before. "Aurora, please, don't go." Her breath trembled. She didn't even know this person. And yet the plea slid under her skin like something she'd once understood, long ago, before all the dreams and the roses and the silence. She closed her eyes. "Who are you?" she whispered. At first, she thought the voice wouldn't answer. Then, "I'm the one who lost you." A shiver ran down her spine. The hallway seemed to inhale, the air thickening with the weight of something unsaid. Aurora swallowed. Her voice barely held steady. Lost me how? No answer. Only a quiet rustling behind the door, like someone sitting up, turning toward her, gathering courage. Aurora curled her fingers around the doorknob. It didn't move. Locked not by a key this time, but by something deeper, something emotional, something heavy. Aurora, the voice said again, soft, breaking, like a confession wrapped in regret. You weren't supposed to hear me. Not yet. Aurora opened her eyes slowly. Her heart pounded with a strange mix of fear and longing. Why not? Because the truth hurts, the voice whispered. And I've already hurt you enough. The hallway dimmed slightly, the frosted windows on the doors flickering like candles threatened by wind. Aurora stepped back, not out of fear, out of confusion, out of the ache that she didn't remember but felt anyway. Please, she said softly, just tell me who you are. The voice exhaled a long, trembling breath. Then, you loved me once. Aurora's fingers tightened around the doorknob. Her throat closed up. Her stomach twisted with something painfully familiar and painfully distant. Loved him? How? When? She had lived her whole life inside a kingdom that cherished her, surrounded by fairies and kindness and sunlight. She had no memory of anyone she would have loved with this kind of weight. Her voice came out a whisper. I don't remember you. I know, the voice answered gently, and that's my fault, too. The hallway flickered again. Something was changing. The doors on either side began to tremble, some quietly, some violently, as if reacting to the conversation, as if the truth scraped against all the stories locked inside them. Aurora stepped closer to the third door, her voice steadier now. If I loved you, she said softly, then let me open the door. Silence. Then I can't let you. Her heart dropped. Why? Because remembering me means remembering everything that happened the night you fell asleep. And if you do, the voice cracked. Aurora, you won't forgive me. Aurora pressed her forehead gently against the door. The wood seemed to pulse beneath her skin. Her voice trembled. Why would I need to forgive you? Another long silence. She could hear his breathing now. Close, shallow, afraid. Finally, because the curse wasn't meant for you. Aurora's eyes flew open. The hallway froze. Even the shadows stopped moving. She leaned back, staring at the door, as if it had suddenly changed shape. Not meant for me? No. Then why did it hit me? Another pause. Aurora. The voice sounded like someone kneeling, someone breaking. It hit you because you saved me. Aurora stumbled backward, her shoulder brushing the opposite door. Her pulse scattered. Her breath came sharp and uneven. She had saved him? Saved someone she didn't remember? Saved someone she once loved? The silver key in her hand glowed faintly, reacting to the unraveling truth. Aurora took a long breath, grounding herself. Open the door, she said again. This time, not pleading, not trembling. Steady, determined. The voice behind the door inhaled sharply. I'm begging you, he whispered. Don't do this yet. Not until you're ready. Not until you remember who I was to you. Aurora stepped forward again. Her palm rested against the door, warmer than before. I don't need to remember everything, she said softly. I just need the truth. The hallway seemed to tremble. The frosted window on the door flickered with a faint silhouette, someone sitting on the floor, head bowed. He whispered, "You're not the one who was meant to sleep forever." Aurora's heart went cold. Her fingers slipped from the doorknob. He continued, voice cracking like old wood. "The curse was placed on me." Aurora froze. No breath, no thought. Only silence pressing against her from all sides. "And you took it." The hallway went completely still. Every door, every shadow, every breath of dreamlight. Aurora stared at the door, unable to move. She felt the truth hit her chest like a slow, heavy wave. She had taken a curse meant for someone else. Someone behind this door. Someone she once loved. And the dream wasn't just a prison. It was a shield. Protecting him. Or protecting her from the memory. Aurora's voice shook. What was the curse going to do to you? On the other side, he whispered the answer like a confession he had carried for lifetimes. It was going to take my heart. Aurora stumbled backward, her breath shattering in her throat. "And you gave yours to me." Her world tilted. Moonlight flickered. Shadows rippled. The hallway began to distort as if the dream itself couldn't hold the weight of the truth. Aurora lifted the key again. She whispered, trembling, "I'm opening the door." The voice behind it broke completely. "Aurora, don't." But she tightened her grip. She pressed the key to the lock. The door glowed, and Chapter 8 waited beyond the trembling wood. The key touched the lock. A soft click. Not loud, not dramatic, just a small trembling sound, like the first tear hitting the floor. The hallway exhaled. The frosted windows flickered. The falling stars from the world before shimmered faintly at the edges of Aurora's vision, as if they too were watching. The door pulsed once beneath her palm. Cold, warm, cold again, as if uncertain, as if torn. On the other side, the voice whispered, not sharp, not angry, just desperately gentle. "Aurora, please, you don't know what waits behind this." Aurora's breath shook. "I know enough." "You don't," he said softly. "You still think you fell asleep because of a spell. You still think someone did this to you." "I did," Aurora said, steady but fragile. "I believed that my whole life. And it's not the truth." He moved closer. She could hear the faint scrape of his hand against the door. It mirrored her own exactly. "You stepped between me and the curse," he said. "And the curse, it took what it could reach first." Aurora blinked slowly. "My heart, yes. A whisper, a confession, a wound. It stole your waking heart, locked it in a dream, and left you sleeping in a world that didn't know how to wake you." Aurora's throat tightened. "But why?" Her voice barely a breath. "Why would I do that for someone I can't even remember?" Silence. "Then you didn't forget me because of time," he said quietly. "You forgot me because of mercy." The hallway dimmed, as if lowering its gaze. Aurora pressed harder against the door. What mercy! The curse took your heart, he said, but it let you forget me to lessen the pain, to make the dream softer, to let you rest. Aurora felt her knees weaken. The dream wasn't a trap. It was padding, protection, a cocoon around something too raw to touch. And the person behind this door, he wasn't her captor. He was the reason she had a heart to lose it all. Aurora whispered, voice quivering, "Tell me who you are." A long pause. Then the faint sound of him sitting with his back against the door, sliding down until he was resting at floor level. When he spoke again, his voice was gentler than the falling stars. "Aurora, I am the one you loved enough to save." Aurora's breath caught. "And the one who failed to save you in return?" The hallway trembled. The lights flickered. Aurora knelt slowly, letting her back rest against the door, too, her shoulder blades aligning with his through the wood. Two silhouettes separated by memory and dream walls that were thinning by the second. She whispered, "Tell me your name." Silence. Then a soft, broken laugh, quiet and aching. "You used to say it like it was a promise," he murmured, "and I'm terrified to hear you say it now when you don't remember what it meant." Aurora closed her eyes. Her voice steadied into something she didn't expect. Not confidence, not certainty, but a strange, instinctive trust that felt older than the dream. "If I loved you once," she whispered, "I can love your name again." On the other side, he inhaled sharply. Hope, fear, both wrapped together so tightly the air itself trembled. Then very softly, "My name is Rowan." Aurora's breath shivered. Rowan. The name moved through her like a shadow of warmth, brushing against places inside her she didn't recognize, but her body did. A memory without shape, a feeling without words. She repeated it softly. Rowan, and the wood beneath her palm trembled, almost like a heartbeat. He exhaled a sound that was almost a sob. "You see?" he whispered. "That's why I didn't want you to open this door. Even saying my name hurts you. Even remembering the sound of it hurts." "It doesn't hurt." Aurora shook her head, even though he couldn't see her. "It feels like something I've been reaching for in the dark." His voice broke. "You reached for me the night you saved me too." Aurora swallowed. "What happened that night, Rowan?" She felt him flinch through the door. "A curse meant to take my heart," he whispered. "It would have killed me, or worse, turned me into something without love, without self, without you." Aurora's breath stilled. "And I? You stepped in front of it," he said, "without thinking, without fear. You put your hand on my chest and the curse went through you instead." Aurora closed her eyes. Her pulse thundered in her ears. "You tried to pull me away," he continued softly. "And when you couldn't, you said..." He stopped. Aurora's eyelashes trembled. "What did I say?" Another silence. Unbearably long. Unbearably heavy. "Aurora," his voice cracked. "You said you'd rather sleep forever than let the world take me from you." Aurora's chest seized. The hallway swayed. The door pressed warm against her spine, and her heartbeat, her dream heartbeat, thudded painfully. She whispered, "Rowan, open the door." He sucked in a breath, sharp and desperate. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because once you open it, he said, voice shaking. You will remember everything. Every moment. Every pain. Every choice you made that night. Aurora lifted the key. Her hands were trembling, but not with fear. With clarity. I'm ready. No, Rowan whispered, almost pleading. You think that, but you aren't. Because once you remember, once you see what you gave up for me, Aurora, you will hate me. Aurora steadied her breath, pressed the key to the lock. The door glowed with a soft silver pulse. I don't hate you, she whispered. You don't remember me, he whispered back. Aurora closed her eyes and turned the key. A click. Light burst through the cracks in the wood like dawn breaking. Rowan's voice tore out of him. Aurora. The door swung open, and Chapter 9 waited in the blinding light beyond. Aurora awoke, not with a gasp, not with fear, but with a slow, drifting awareness, like rising from the bottom of a warm, sunlit lake. She didn't open her eyes immediately. Something in her insisted she shouldn't rush. The world around her was still shifting, still forming, as though it wasn't quite ready to be looked at. She lay very still. Softness pressed against her cheek velvet. Moss? It carried a faint coolness, like dew that had not yet decided whether it wanted to turn into morning mist. Then came a sound. A hum. Low, steady, familiar in a way that tugged gently at her chest. It wasn't a voice, but it felt like someone speaking to her from behind a closed door. Aurora finally let her eyelids flutter open. At first, she saw only gold. Not bright, shimmering gold, but muted like sunlight filtering through old lace curtains. Shapes began to take form. She was lying inside a circle of tall stone columns, each wrapped in twisting vines that glowed faintly from within. Their light was soft and pulsing, as though breathing. A sanctuary, a secret chamber hidden deep within the forest. Aurora pushed herself up slowly. Her limbs felt heavier than usual, not weak, just weighted with something invisible, like green sand clinging to her skin. How long was I asleep? She tried to remember, but time itself seemed slippery, like a ribbon sliding through her fingers. She stood. The moment she straightened her spine, a gentle vibration ran through the ground beneath her feet. It wasn't a warning. It was a greeting. The vines on the columns brightened. Aurora brushed her fingertips across one of them. It warmed immediately under her touch, glowing brighter, the light swirling along the vine like water flowing through a glass tube. She felt it, a subtle thread weaving between her and the forest magic. Not pulling, not pushing, connecting. Why do you know me? She murmured. A faint echo answered from somewhere deep in the chamber. Not a voice, but a reflection of her question. The magic itself seemed to breathe. Something stirred behind her. Aurora turned. A large stone door she hadn't noticed before sat embedded in the far wall. Its surface was carved with intricate patterns, spirals, arcs, lines that looped back into themselves. At the center was a single symbol she recognized instantly. A closed eye. Her breath caught. She'd seen this symbol before, in the dreams that came again and again, on the door wrapped in roots, on the wall that pulsed behind her eyelids every night. This was the same eye, only here it wasn't tangled in roses or buried in dust. It was alive, glowing faintly. Aurora stepped toward it. Every footfall echoed lightly through the chamber, as if the stone floor carried memory of all who had walked here before her. She lifted her hand, stopped, not from fear, from something far stranger. A sense of déjà vu so strong she felt dizzy. Her fingertips hovered just an inch from the closed eye carved in stone. Heat radiated from it, gentle but insistent, like a heartbeat waiting for hers to match its rhythm. Then a sharp whisper sliced through her mind. Do not open what you cannot yet understand. Aurora flinched and turned sharply around. No one, no figure in the chamber, no shadow moving behind the columns. But the whisper had been real, too real. It wasn't the forest, it wasn't the vines, it wasn't her imagination. This voice came from the same place the dream door came from. Something ancient, something hidden inside the spell that kept her sleeping. Aurora tried to listen again, but the chamber had returned to silence. She exhaled and let her palm rest carefully against the carved eye. The stone warmed, then softened, not melting, not crumbling, but shifting like skin coming alive beneath her touch. Lines of light crawled through the carvings, tracing every spiral, every arc. The door glowed. Aurora braced herself. The ground vibrated softly. The vines on the columns pulsed. And somewhere beyond the door, deeper than the forest, older than any kingdom, she felt a flicker. Not danger, not threat, recognition, as though something waiting on the other side knew her name and had been waiting a very, very long time. Aurora drew in a breath. The stone eye opened. Not physically, not like a lid lifting, but the slit at its center filled with light, widening from within like a sunrise breaking through a crack in the horizon. Warmth spilled out. A gentle wind circled her ankles, lifting the edge of her dress. Her hair moved in the current. Aurora stepped back, heart thudding in her chest, but not painfully. More like anticipation. A door wasn't just an entrance. It was an invitation. The light brightened, and somewhere within it she began to hear something, a melody. Soft, slow, like a lullaby sung by someone who had never forgotten her. She closed her eyes, let the sound wash over her, and suddenly something clicked. A memory. Not clear, not full, but a fragment. A hand on her forehead. A whisper. A promise wrapped in warmth. When you dream, you will walk deeper than anyone has walked before. Aurora's eyes flew open. She knew that voice, but she didn't know why. The chamber pulsed with light, urging her to come closer. Aurora took a step, then another. She stood at the threshold, the glow touching her feet, her hands, her cheeks like a warm sigh. Behind her, the vines dimmed slightly, as though bowing. Before her, the door's light hummed, patient and welcoming. Aurora inhaled once more, steady and slow. Then she stepped through the light, and the chamber disappeared. Light swallowed Aurora whole. Not blinding light, not the harsh brilliance of magic gone wild, but something softer like warm mist that knew the shape of her body before she even stepped into it. She could feel it brush her shoulders, curl around her wrists, settle into her breath. It wasn't pulling her forward. It wasn't pushing her back. It was simply there, patient and steady, as if waiting for her to understand something she had forgotten. Aurora blinked. The world slowly sharpened. She wasn't in the forest anymore, nor in the stone chamber, nor anywhere she could name with certainty. The air smelled faintly of lavender and rain-soaked stone. A corridor stretched before her, long, winding, dimly lit by floating ribbons of light drifting like slow-moving fireflies. But the corridor wasn't built of stone or wood. It was built of dream. Walls shimmered with shifting patterns, swirls, fleeting images, colors that changed when she breathed. Footsteps echoed, though she wasn't sure they were hers alone. Aurora took a cautious step. The floor rippled like water beneath her bare feet, but held firm. She let her fingers graze the nearest wall. Images shimmered at her touch. A cradle, a woman's silhouette, a spinning wheel glinting in moonlight. Aurora pulled her hand back sharply. The images dissolved into mist. These are memories, she realized. Not hers, or not only hers. The corridor hummed softly, like it was acknowledging her thought. Aurora walked. Her steps were slow, deliberate. Every few paces, new memories surfaced on the walls. A kingdom in celebration. A baby held aloft in a circle of light. 3 figures cloaked in shimmering magic. A blessing. Another blessing. Something like a curse, but not quite. Aurora stopped. The third memory was different. Its edges were darker, its glow more fleeting, like a candle guttering in the wind. A figure in shadow extended a hand toward the cradle. Not violent, not angry, sorrowful. Deeply, profoundly sorrowful. The shadow figure whispered something. Aurora leaned closer, but the image dissolved before she could hear the words. She pressed her palm against the wall again, harder this time. Nothing. The corridor didn't want to show her more. Not yet. Aurora exhaled slowly. She kept walking. The further she went, the quieter the corridor became. Not empty, simply holding its breath again, the way the forest had. She turned a corner and froze. Ahead of her stood a door. Not a heavy stone door like before. Not wrapped in vines or carved in ancient spirals. This one was wooden, simple, warm to the eyes. Its surface glowed faintly, like it had been touched by golden sunlight moments ago. A small symbol was etched at its center, not the closed eye. An open one. Aurora's heart gave a strange, soft lurch. A pull. A recognition she didn't understand. She stepped toward the door. With every step, the corridor behind her dimmed, as if knowing she wouldn't return the same way. Aurora reached the door. Her hand trembled just slightly, not from fear, from the odd certainty that she had opened this door before, in a dream, or a destiny, or both. She pressed her palm against the wooden surface. Warmth blossomed instantly, running up her arm like a thread of fire without burn. Aurora whispered, "Show me." The door answered. It didn't swing open. It unfolded like a petal blooming in slow motion. Light spilled out. Cool this time. Silvery, like moonlight pooled in still water. Aurora stepped through. The world shifted like breath drawn in reverse. Suddenly she was standing in a vast circular hall. The ceiling rose so high it disappeared into mist. The floor was made of smooth stone, etched with symbols that glowed faintly beneath her feet. Around her were 12 pedestals arranged in a ring. Each pedestal held something different. A small vial of stardust, a quill made of crystal, a shard of mirror reflecting things that weren't in the room, a rose that never wilted, a spinning wheel without a spindle, a silver crown, and 6 more she didn't recognize, objects whose shapes seemed to shift every time she tried to look directly at them. Aurora turned slowly, taking it all in. This place was not a memory, nor a dream. It was older than both, a place built inside the spell that had shaped her life. At the center of the hall stood a single pedestal, higher than the others. Empty? Aurora hesitated. The air grew still, silent, waiting. A flicker of movement caught her eye. A soft glow gathered above the empty pedestal, swirling, forming, condensing. Light shaped itself into a small object. Aurora stepped closer. A spindle, slender, golden, glowing like it held a heartbeat inside. Her breath hitched. She reached out, but stopped just short of touching it. The spindle vibrated gently, as if sensing her nearness. A whisper rose through the hall, the same voice that had warned her in the chamber before. Not everything that hurt you came to harm you. Aurora's throat tightened. The spindle pulsed again, and this time the whisper softened. Some pain was meant to protect you. The hall dimmed, the light contracting toward the spindle. Aurora felt something shift inside her chest, a door opening inward, quiet and fragile. She didn't understand the whole truth yet, not even close. But she understood this. She was not here to break the spell. She was here to understand it. Aurora lifted her hand. The spindle glowed brighter. She touched it. The hall exploded in light. The moment Aurora's fingertip brushed the glowing spindle, the world flared open. Not violently, not like an explosion of fire, but like a star blooming in slow motion. The light didn't push her away. It expanded around her, folding her into its center. Every particle shimmered with warmth, swirling gently as though carrying memories in their glow. Aurora closed her eyes. She didn't fall. She didn't stand. She simply floated, weightless in a world that had released itself from ordinary rules. A sound drifted through the brightness. A heartbeat, but not hers. Steady, old, patient. The heartbeat of the spell. Aurora breathed in, and with each breath, fragments of images flickered around her. A candlelit room. 3 women cloaked in starlight. A cradle woven with gold thread. And a 4th figure standing just beyond the circle. Not welcome, but not banished. Her face half hidden in shadow, her eyes filled with something complicated. Regret, fear, love twisted into a shape that hurt. Aurora reached out, but the image dissolved before her fingers could touch it. Another appeared. A soft hand pressed against a baby's forehead. Magic flowed from the hand like pale violet smoke, settling into the child's skin with a sigh. A blessing, but layered beneath it, something heavier. A protection formed from desperation, not malice. Aurora's breath trembled. The images spun faster. Memories mingled with magic. A kingdom trying to keep a child safe. A fear no one would name aloud. A sacrifice disguised as a curse. And a spell designed not to punish, but to delay something. To pause time long enough for a prophecy to unfold. Aurora drifted backward, heart aching with questions she didn't yet have words for. Another pulse echoed through the light. This time it traveled through her bones, gentle but unmistakable. You are not asleep by accident, and you will not wake without understanding why. The light dimmed slightly, concentrating itself around the spindle again as if gathering breath. Aurora opened her eyes. The hall slowly reformed around her, the 12 pedestals, the symbols beneath her feet, the mist curling near the ceiling. Everything looked the same, and yet she felt different, as if the space recognized her now and expected something from her. The spindle hovered just above the central pedestal, still glowing softly. Aurora stepped closer. Her reflection shimmered on its golden surface, eyes wide, unsure, determined all at once. "What am I supposed to do?" she whispered. The hall did not answer. Instead, the spindle tilted forward, pointing toward a faint archway she hadn't noticed before. The archway was nearly invisible, a seam in the mist, a doorway made of silence rather than stone. A cool breeze drifted from it, carrying a scent she recognized instantly, the forest after rain. Home. Aurora's throat tightened with a strange mixture of longing and dread. She glanced back at the spindle. It hovered, patient, unwavering. Not a weapon, not a trap, not a curse. A key, one she was meant to carry. Aurora reached out and closed her fingers around it. It warmed instantly, soft as a heartbeat. Light rippled across the hall, dimming the other pedestals, drawing all attention to her, not in worship, not in fear, but in recognition. The spell had accepted her touch. Aurora turned toward the archway. As she stepped closer, the mist parted like curtains, revealing a path winding into a darkness that wasn't threatening, just unknown. The spindle pulsed in her hand, guiding her forward. She crossed the threshold. Behind her, the hall faded like a dream when morning comes too fast. Ahead of her, a new world stirred. Not forest, not kingdom, not memory. Something deeper, something waiting. Aurora tightened her grip on the spindle and stepped into the dark. Aurora stepped forward into the darkness. It was not cold, not empty. It was alive, thick, with a faint, murmuring echo of voices just out of reach. The spindle in her hand pulsed softly, like a heartbeat answering the rhythm of the hidden world. Her footsteps were silent, yet the shadows shifted as she moved, stretching toward her like liquid silk, then retreating just as quickly. A voice, faint and melodic, wound itself around her ears. "You've come far, Aurora, but you do not yet understand," she whispered. "I want to understand." The shadows shifted again, and suddenly shapes began to form within them. Not solid, not flesh, not faces fully human, but fragments, gestures, fleeting expressions, memories captured mid-motion. A child laughing, a cradle rocking, a hand brushing against another hand, a moment of sorrow, quick and unrelenting, a soft kiss pressed to a sleeping forehead. Aurora's chest tightened. Each shadow seemed to hold a fragment of a life she had lived, or a life she might have lived if she had never fallen asleep. The spindle guided her, lifting her gaze to the far end of the room, where a faint glow marked another door small, almost fragile, yet distinct. Its surface shimmered with the faintest reflection of light, as if waiting for her to acknowledge its presence. Aurora approached cautiously. The shadows whispered in unison, "Do not fear what you must remember." She paused, taking a deep breath. "Rowan," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the murmurs of the shadows. "Are you here?" A figure shifted within the darkness, tall, familiar, cloaked in soft, trembling light. Not solid yet, but unmistakably him. "I am," the figure replied, voice breaking softly, "and I have waited for you in every shadow you could not see." Aurora's hand instinctively lifted the spindle. The figure stepped closer. The light from the spindle spilled over him, outlining every feature, every line of sorrow and care etched into his face. She realized she could see him as he was, not as she remembered from dreams or fragments of memory, but in truth wounded, weary, and utterly human. "You've carried so much," Rowan whispered, voice low, "even while you slept." Aurora swallowed hard. "I didn't know. I didn't understand." "Now you do," he said softly, "and now you must choose." Aurora's gaze fell to the spindle. It pulsed like a living heart in her palm. A choice, a power, a burden. "What must I choose?" she asked. Rowan's eyes glistened in the dim light. "The shadows you see, they are the truths the spell tried to protect. Some are yours, some are mine, some belong to the world outside this dream. To awaken fully, you must decide which truths to embrace and which to leave behind." Aurora's breath caught. Every step she had taken, every memory and fragment she had touched, led to this. Her fingers closed tighter around the spindle. A warmth spread from her hand up her arm, up into her chest. A heartbeat. "Yes," she whispered, "I will face them." The shadows pulsed, retreating slightly to reveal the doorway ahead. The faint light grew brighter, inviting, yet not overpowering. Rowan took a step closer, his hand brushing against hers. "For every shadow you accept," he said, "you will carry a piece of the world with you. And a piece of me." Aurora nodded, tears pricking her eyes. "I am ready." The spindle pulsed once more, intensely this time, and the shadows recoiled gently, folding into themselves like paper cranes closing their wings. Aurora lifted her hand and stepped toward the doorway. The moment she crossed the threshold, the whispers ceased, replaced by a soft, hollow silence full of anticipation and unspoken truths. Behind her, the room of whispering shadows faded, leaving only the echo of her heartbeat and the warmth of the spindle. Ahead, the world waited, and Aurora knew with certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Aurora stepped out of the corridor into a space that felt impossibly vast. Not dark, not light, just a soft twilight, as if the world itself were pausing to breathe. The ground beneath her feet was grass, but not ordinary grass. Each blade shimmered faintly, like silver threads woven into green. The air carried the scent of roses, rain, and something faintly metallic, like a memory that had been pressed into time. Rowan followed close behind, silent, his presence a steady warmth at her back. She could feel him in her periphery, a tether between them, though the distance was small. Yet somehow the air between them vibrated with all the things left unsaid. "Where are we?" she asked softly. Her voice seemed louder than it should have been, echoing across the twilight garden. Rowan lifted a hand, brushing a finger across a floating petal that hovered mid-air, suspended by magic. "This garden," he said, "is where the spell stored what could not be carried while you slept. Memories, promises, love, regrets. All the pieces of the world that were too fragile to remain in reality." Aurora's gaze swept across the expanse. Thousands of petals floated like tiny lanterns, each holding a glimmering shape within. A child laughing, a shadowed kiss, a warm embrace. Moments so vivid she almost reached out, wanting to touch them, to feel them real again. "Are these mine?" she asked, hesitant. "Or yours?" Rowan shook his head slowly. "Some are yours, some are mine. Some belong to the world outside this dream, but all of them have waited for you to see them." Aurora knelt, letting her hand hover above a petal that contained a small cradle. Inside, a baby slept, wrapped in golden light. A name whispered in her mind, familiar and painful all at once. "Aurora." She recoiled, heart trembling. I was there? I remember nothing." Rowan's hand brushed hers gently. "You were always there. Even when the spell took your memory, your heart remembered enough to act. You carried a love that didn't need remembering, it simply existed." Aurora exhaled slowly. The warmth from his touch spread through her chest, gentle but insistent. A heartbeat not hers alone. "Rowan," she whispered, "I feel it, but it's so heavy. So many things I don't understand." He knelt beside her, his gaze soft but unwavering. "Understanding will come. Slowly. You've carried centuries of magic and memory in this body. Some things must unfold in time, not all at once." Aurora's eyes were drawn to a cluster of petals hovering above the grass, flickering faintly. One in particular shone brighter than the others. It pulsed, as if alive, vibrating in rhythm with her heartbeat. She reached for it. Her fingers brushed the light, and the world shifted. The garden expanded. Ribbons of mist swirled into the sky. The petals rose higher, spinning in an intricate dance, revealing glimpses of moments she had never lived, or had she. A door opening, a hand extended, a promise whispered into the darkness, and a shadow that followed, always just out of reach. Rowan placed his hand over hers. "Do not fear what you see. Each fragment is a choice you made, a piece of your heart that refused to stay hidden. To awaken fully, you must accept them all, joy and sorrow alike." Aurora's eyes brimmed with tears. This is so much," she whispered. "I don't know if I can bear it." "You can," he said softly, "and you must, because the spell will not release you until your heart has seen the truth." A hush fell across the garden. Even the floating petals paused in their dance, hanging in the soft twilight as if listening. Aurora drew a deep breath. The spindle in her hand pulsed. Her pulse answered. Her heartbeat, her breath, the lingering warmth of Rowan's presence, all aligned in a rhythm she recognized deep in her bones. I am ready, she said, voice trembling but firm, to see everything, to remember, to forgive, and to choose. Rowan nodded, his eyes glistening in the twilight. The petals responded to her resolve, spinning faster, forming patterns that glimmered like constellations. The light thickened, surrounding them both in a cocoon of shimmering memory and magic. Aurora felt herself lifted slightly, weightless, carried by the flow of memories and truths that the spell had held back. She was not afraid, not fully, because Rowan was beside her, because the light felt like home, because her heart, though heavy, was unbroken. And in that suspended space where dream and memory intertwined, Aurora understood something crucial. The spell had not trapped her. It had prepared her to wake, to love, to choose. The garden exhaled, petals spinning around her in a luminous spiral, and Aurora took her first true step forward into the unknown that was hers to claim. Aurora floated through the spiraling petals, the spindle warm in her palm. Every fragment of memory, every whispered promise, every shadow of a choice surrounded her like a living constellation. She had thought she understood the spell, its protection, its patience, but now, stepping into the heart of the garden, she realized how little she truly knew. Ahead of her, a faint shimmer emerged from the mist, a mirror. Not ordinary glass, not framed in gold or stone. It floated freely, suspended meter, reflecting not just the light around it, but everything inside her. Her memories, her fears, her love, her doubts. Every heartbeat, every tear she had ever shed, every laugh she had forgotten or had yet to remember was captured in its surface. Aurora hesitated. Her reflection shifted as she moved, flickering between the girl who had fallen asleep in innocence, the young woman who had carried love through dreams, and someone she barely recognized, a version of herself grown through sorrow and choice. She could see Rowan standing beside her in the mirror, but his reflection was fragmented. Pieces of him appeared in some shards, absent in others. It was as if the mirror itself measured their intertwined fates, weighing memory against possibility. Rowan's hand touched hers. "I won't lie," he said softly. "This mirror, it does not forgive. It does not lie. It shows everything you have lost, and everything you could reclaim." Aurora drew a trembling breath. "I'm not sure I can face it," she admitted. Her voice was almost swallowed by the garden, by the soft hum of petals spinning like tiny suns around them. "You can," Rowan whispered. "You have already faced more than anyone could imagine. The spell spared you only the pain you could not bear. Until now." She nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the mirror. With a tentative step, she moved forward. The moment her reflection touched her, a ripple ran through the air. The garden shifted. The petals spun faster, luring into streaks of light. And Aurora felt herself being drawn into the surface, not physically, but in every other way. Her memories, her heartbeats, her choices, they all flowed toward it, toward herself. The mirror pulsed once, and then it began to speak not with words, but with sensation, a flood of memory and emotion washing over her all at once. She saw the night she had first fallen asleep, not as a victim, not as a child, but as a protector. The spell had touched her because she had reached for Rowan first, because her heart, pure and fierce, had acted before fear or doubt could intervene. She saw Rowan trapped in shadows she had not yet understood. She saw herself walking through the forest, confronting every echo, every whisper, every memory the spell had held. She saw her laughter, her tears, her courage, threaded through dreams and nightmares alike. And through it all, she felt the spindle's warmth, guiding her through each vision. Aurora gasped. Her knees nearly buckled under the weight of revelation. I did all of this, she whispered. Even while I was asleep? Rowan stepped closer, voice trembling. Yes, you were always awake in ways the world could not see. Your love, your sacrifice, they held me. They held the spell at bay. Aurora felt tears spill freely. I never knew, I never remembered. You remember now, Rowan said gently, and that is enough. The mirror pulsed again, and this time the shards of reflection coalesced. Her reflection became whole. Rowan's reflection joined hers fully, merging with the light of the spindle. The garden responded, petals spiraling upward, forming a vortex of gentle luminescence that seemed to bridge dream and reality. Aurora lifted the spindle. The mirror responded, shimmering and bending the light around them. For the first time, she understood. The spindle, the mirror, the garden, they were not obstacles. They were gateways to waking, to truth, to the life that awaited her and the love she had already given and would continue to give. Rowan took her hand. We can face it together, he whispered. No more fragments. No more waiting. The spell has held you long enough. Aurora's heart surged. The fear, the doubt, the sorrow, all of it was still there. But beneath it, a fierce, unshuckable certainty. She was ready. She touched the mirror fully with the spindle. Light engulfed them both, a tide of warmth, memory, and possibility. And Aurora realized to awaken, to remember, to choose, was to step forward together. And in that instant, the garden, the corridor, the whispers, and the spell itself all seemed to exhale, granting her the first true breath of freedom. Aurora's eyes fluttered open. Not with a start, not with panic, but slowly like the first trace of dawn brushing over a quiet horizon. The spindle had dissolved into warmth in her palm, leaving behind only the faint trace of its heartbeat. She was no longer in the garden, no longer in the corridor, no longer among whispering shadows. The room around her was dim. Moonlight spilled across soft wooden floors, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny fireflies. A curtain swayed gently in the night breeze, and the faint scent of lavender drifted from the windowsill. Rowan was beside her, not a shadow, not a fragment. Real, breathing, alive. Aurora's chest tightened. Every heartbeat felt like a drum, signaling both relief and wonder. She blinked slowly, taking him in the curve of his jaw, the light catching his eyes, the subtle tremor of tension still lingering in his shoulders. "You're awake," he whispered. His voice cracked softly, though it carried a quiet joy, like someone who had waited centuries for a single word. Aurora reached for him instinctively. Her hand brushed his, and warmth spread through her fingers, through her arm, and deep into her chest. "Yes," she murmured. "I'm awake." For a moment, neither spoke. The room seemed to hold its breath with them. Outside, the world was quiet, but it no longer felt empty. It hummed faintly, alive with all the pieces she had reclaimed, the memories, the love, the choices, the fragments of herself she hadn't known were missing. Rowan took her hand fully in his, holding it like a promise. "You carried everything inside the spell," he said softly, "and you returned whole. Not just the girl who slept, but the woman who faced every shadow and embraced every light." Aurora's eyes glistened with tears. She didn't try to stop. I remember," she whispered. "Not everything, but enough to know. You were always with me, even when I couldn't see." He smiled gently, a mixture of relief and awe. "Always." The room seemed to shift around them. Moonlight grew warmer, curling into the corners, touching the floorboards like gentle fingers. Shadows soft, folding themselves neatly away. And Aurora felt it, the delicate balance between sleep and wakefulness, between magic and reality. She pressed her forehead lightly against his shoulder. "Will everything be normal now?" she asked softly. Rowan chuckled, low and tender, brushing her hair from her face. "Normal is a word for people who never walked through gardens of memories and mirrors of truth," he said. "But we can leave together, awake, remembering, choosing." Aurora exhaled, a slow, shivering sigh, and nodded. "Yes, together." Outside, the night remained quiet, but it felt alive in a way it never had before. A life resumed, not starting over, but continuing with all the depth, all the weight, and all the love that had always been waiting. And for the first time, what felt like forever, Aurora allowed herself to smile fully, without fear, without hesitation, because she had returned, because she remembered, because Rowan was here, and the world, with all its shadows and light, waited for them to step forward together. The first light of morning slipped through the curtains, soft and golden, brushing Aurora's face. She blinked awake, but this time fully, not as a girl trapped in sleep, nor as a wanderer in a dream, but as herself whole, present, aware. Rowan was beside her, leaning against the windowsill, watching the sun touch the world with quiet reverence. When he saw her open her eyes, his face softened into a smile that carried relief, joy, and something unspoken but profound. Aurora stretched, feeling the warmth of her body and the weight of her memories settling naturally into her bones. The spindle, now gone, left only the echo of its pulse within her heart, a gentle reminder that every choice she had made, every fragment of her journey, had been hers. "Good morning," she said, her voice still husky with sleep. "Good morning," Rowan replied, his hand brushing against hers. It was a simple gesture, but it carried the gravity of centuries and the intimacy of 1,000 unspoken truths. Aurora rose from the bed, stepping barefoot onto the floor. The room was simple, familiar, yet it felt charged with possibility. The air held the scent of lavender and rain, the forest, the garden, and the corridors of dreams folded seamlessly into this waking world. She turned to Rowan. "What now?" she asked softly, her heart still echoing the rhythm of the spell's lessons. He took a deep breath, eyes gentle but resolute. "Now," he said, "we live, we choose. We carry everything we've learned, not as a burden, but as strength." Aurora nodded. Her gaze swept across the room, but her mind stretched outward to the world waiting beyond these walls. She had been given a second chance, a chance to face life with clarity, love, and courage. Rowan stepped closer, and together they walked toward the window. The morning sun painted the sky in shades of rose and gold. Birds called softly in the distance. The world had not paused while she slept. It had waited, patient and willing, for her return. Aurora reached out, letting her fingers brush against Rowan's. The warmth of their touch grounded her in reality, yet did not erase the wonder of what she had seen and felt. Everything she had experienced, the garden, the mirror, the shadows, the light, was still with her, woven quietly into the fabric of her being. "I think," she said softly, "I understand now. The spell wasn't punishment. It was protection. It was patience and love." Rowan smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yes, and love," he added, "is what will carry us forward. Not just memory or magic, but choice. Every day we live together." Aurora leaned against him, closing her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the morning and their shared heartbeat fill her completely. For the first time, the line between dream and reality felt natural, gentle, and whole. She whispered almost to herself, "I am awake, and I am home." The sun rose higher, illuminating the room with golden light. Outside, the world moved with quiet grace, ordinary yet extraordinary. Aurora and Rowan stood together, holding on to the present, carrying the lessons of dreams, and stepping forward with courage, love, and the knowledge that no shadow could linger where they chose to shine. And in that soft morning light, where dreams met reality, they began their life anew,